Hi everyone, welcome to Psychology. I'm Miss M, and today we are going over a learning approach study. This is Pepperberg's study on parrot learning. This study was done in 1987, and I really want to make something clear. This isn't memorization. Okay, we're not talking about memory like we did in the cognitive approach studies. We are talking about learning, actual learning that can be done in one period of time, and then we can go and apply it to another scenario, the future, okay? Just kind of like how humans learn from experiences so that we can grow and not make the same mistake again in the future. So this is absolute learning at its finest. And this is special because we're talking about a study that does not involve primates, and most previous research on any communication with animals, from humans to animals, which would be heterospecific, or between animals within the same species, which is called conspecific. So this study is great because we are looking at a different species other than primates, other than humans, and we are learning some new things about their ability to create language, and learn concepts. If you're new to psychology, welcome in. This study specifically is for the AS level, although if you are studying learning approach in general, this could be beneficial to you. So let's get into the background of Pepperberg. Now, in previous learning approach studies, I've gone over operant conditioning, classical conditioning. What are even the ideas of those? If you're in my Patreon classroom, please see the operant and classical conditioning PowerPoint that I have available for you. Teachers and all students have that capability when you get into my Patreon levels, okay? So this type of learning, what is even the purpose of it? Now, when we are classically conditioned, it is us training ourselves to respond to a certain stimuli. We are trying to create some type of output response with a stimuli of some sort, okay? So it can even just be a clicking of a pen, all right? And that could calm someone down. On the opposite end, it could also rile someone up. It all depends on what we pair this with. Now, for operant conditioning, we are more trying to shape behavior, okay? We're trying to make people understand that there's a behavior and a consequence, okay? And that this behavior equals this type of consequence. Now, we're not going to go so deep into that in this study specifically. I want to tell you a little bit about the background information because it is really interesting. So we know the study was done in 1987, and around that time, we have a lot of researchers, including Pepperberg, that are really interested in language, specifically language with animals, between animals, and some words, vocab words that I'll use in the study, although we only hear it in the Yamamoto study, is conspecific versus heterospecific. Now, if we are saying language that is conspecific, we are saying that it belongs to or it is being presented within the same species, okay? So two primates, two humans, two parrots, okay? If we have someone that says that language is heterospecific, then we are communicating with different species, okay? So that would be humans to primates, primates to parrots, humans to parrots. And just to let you guys know that most research shows that heterospecific communication is basically confined to primates, which means that we have really only figured out how to communicate with primates, humans and primates. We have seen a lot of parrots and birds that mimic, but as far as communication, teaching sign language, lever pressing buttons to communicate, that has only been done with primates. One thing that has been shown across species is called conceptual categorization. And this is the ability for animals to tell whether two objects or things are the same or different. So maybe you're asking, why would animals even need this? Why would we need conceptual categorization? Now, here's a great example. We can use any animal, we can use birds. Let's just use birds because we're talking about birds. So parrots, birds, if they go to eat a berry or they go to a tree and they see that tree and it has certain types of leaves and they see a berry and it's a certain color and they eat that berry and they have a great experience, they don't die, right? They're going to have to take that information that they learned about that that area, that tree, what it looked like, the smell, the sight, all these things that have to do with that berry. And they're going to have to take that information and store it away so that when they come across it again in the future, they can say, oh, is this the same as the berry I ate before that didn't kill me? And of course, the opposite is true for things that we want to stay away from or we have an aversion towards. We have to make sure that, is this the same or is this different? If we are presented with two berries that are very similar looking, but the leaves are different, we have to be able to tell the difference between those. Well, at least those in the survival mode that live daily in that survival. The reason that we believe that conceptual categorization is so heavily influenced in birds is because birds need this type of spatial navigation, this type of memory in order to migrate yearly. Birds need to remember, hey, does this look similar? Does this ground look similar? Do these trees look similar to where we were last year? Do we have to keep going? Do we have to, was it a little bit more to the right? It's spatial navigation is your mental memory map of where you're going. For example, if you can close your eyes right now and you know where the closest McDonald's is to your house, close your eyes, get in your fake car in your head and drive there on the roads that are given to you in real life. That is you navigating spatially, okay? You're not actually physically doing it. And birds need that type of memory, which is connected to this conceptual categorization. In a simple laboratory form experiment, first, when we present the animal or the participant with two items, the very first thing that that animal must do is figure out what category the two items share. So if they're both shapes, but one is a triangle, one is an octagon, but they're both green, then the animal must first recognize the thing they have in common, which is their color. From green, from knowing that it's green, that green is what they share, they must also realize that green can be applied to other items that aren't necessarily like right in front of them. And if you've heard the term symbolic representation, this is basically learning in one environment and then taking what we've learned in this environment and applying it to a completely new scenario that we've never even seen before, something that is in the future that we have not even gone, done, or experienced. Now, before we get into the procedure of the study, I do want to make one thing clear. Remember, this study is not specifically on memory, although there was a lot of memory training that went into Alex, the African gray parrot, prior to this study. And the reason that I'm saying this is keep this in mind. Would birds be able to vocally do this in the wild, in nature? Just remember this for any evaluation on ecological validity at the end. All right, so let's talk about this African gray parrot named Alex. This is actually an animal case study, okay? This is an animal case study that is similar to Savidra, but in the sense that we're studying one particular participant. Now, case studies are usually done when the scenario is very new, the research is very new, or if we are studying a person that has kind of like an individualistic problem that not many people have, we'll sit and we'll study that one person in particular. Now, let's talk about Irene Pepperberg, because how did she even get this parrot? In around, I think it was like 1970s, mid-70s, 1977, we'll just say, because the study was published in 1987, and I know he was trained for about 10 years before the study took place. So Irene Pepperberg went right into a pet store, and she noticed that they had, there were a couple African gray parrots that were there, and most of them were older, she had said, and she needed a parrot to study. She was studying language, and she was really interested in this type of teaching animals language, memorization, whether they can create their own language. So what she did was, because she's this amazing scientist, she went to someone who worked there, and she asked the person who worked there to randomly choose a parrot for her. Okay, so she wanted to make sure that she has zero bias in choosing this African gray parrot, Alex. Now, after you see the accomplishments of Alex, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, he's such an amazing bird. Do all birds like this? Are all birds this intelligent? And I don't know the answer to that, but what I want to point out is that Irene Pepperberg made it so important for her to randomly select this bird in case something like this happened. In case he had this amazing intelligence, she can say that it was random, which is more likely to be generalized amongst other parrots, specifically African gray parrots. So let's talk about the sample a little bit, because we have this African gray parrot named Alex, and he has been subject to other communication and cognition scientific research over the past 10 years. So he does come with a very extensive vocabulary. But remember, we're not specifically looking for him to just name items. We are looking for him to tell what is the same or different between items using the vocabulary that he already knows. Okay, so some of the stuff that Alex could already do when we started this experiment. I'm gonna read this to you from the book because there's a lot of things I wanna make sure that I get them to you, okay? They're not so difficult to understand, but it's just important to know that he did have this very in-depth vocabulary, and it's not that we are specifically asking him to name the color of something, but more so understand that the color is what was different in between these two objects. So the things that he already previously knew, for example, he knew how to say the colors red, green, yellow, blue, gray, several different shapes, triangles, squares. He could say different materials like wood, cork, cotton. He could say paper. He could even say some metals. He did also have past experience like replying to questions, like if someone said, "What color is this?" He could say green. And he did also have the capability of combining two things, two attributes, two adjectives per se. He could say things like green wood or yellow paper. And like I previously said, we aren't actually teaching the parrot how to respond to colors. We are not teaching the parrot, this is wood. We are not teaching the parrot, this is green. What we are doing is teaching the parrot to respond to abstract answers, to abstract reasoning. We are asking the parrot to name a category, not just a color, but to know that those are two different colors. Does that make sense? Like, this is amazing. So it's really important to know that Alex was given free range of this laboratory during the day. He was put in a cage with like a little sheet over it at night. He was given an adequate diet. He was treated like their baby. So as far as animal ethics is concerned, they did go pretty well in the study, which is probably why she got the sign off to actually do the study. Now, there's a couple things that we also need to remember and recognize. The stuff that's going on during the time of this study. I mean, Alex was involved in many studies during this time. He was not just doing this study. And it's really important to even have this idea or concept that any mistakes that he made in the study, it could have been done because of training that was happening for other studies. So specifically, he engaged in training sessions that were 2 to 4 times a week. Those sessions would last anywhere from like 5 minutes to an hour. And, you know, he also engaged in other trainings for other studies at this exact same time. So it's something to keep in mind. Before we begin the procedure, these are the shapes that were used in the trials. Just the shapes. I'm talking about the shapes, okay? All the colors were colors that he could see, obviously, but they weren't like exactly always in this color. Just letting you know. Now I'm going to explain the training methods that were used in this case study. This is, if you might have seen, MR or model rival approach. This was actually also seen in the Bandura study in the very first classroom where our teacher had to model the behavior for the child. Basically, what is happening in the model rival approach is we have this one human that acts as a trainer to a second human. And in this study specifically, we have to kind of pretend to be a parrot. I know that sounds a little funny, but like our trainer, which was not Pepperberg, okay, very important to know. Our trainer had to pretend to be a parrot to show Alex what exactly it was we wanted him to do. Now, a lot of people don't really understand the rival part of this model rival, so here we go. I'm gonna be the model, this is gonna be my parrot, and I'm supposed to be teaching this parrot what I want the parrot to do in this experiment. Now, we have to give some type of incentive, right? Now, we are rivaling for the attention of the experimenter. So that's where the rival comes in, is I'm creating such a pleasant experience as the fake participant that I want this parrot to jump in my position and be like, well, I want to do that. So let's, for example, I'm teaching the parrot the very first time, okay? And I'm presented, this is all I had with me, okay? I'm presented with these 2 Lego bricks, okay? 2 Lego bricks. And I notice that these bricks look exactly the same, right? Except for one thing. What category? You know the category. So I'm presented and my experimenter says to me, different. I have to respond with what's different about these. So I'm going to say color. And then I'm going to get a treat and I'm going to get praise from the experimenter. Now, I have this parrot and he's watching everything that I'm doing. Now, what we're hoping is after so many trials of this, the parrot's gonna wanna jump in and get that attention and get those treats from the experimenter. If the bird decides to jump in and says the right answer before I do, that's when we turn to the bird and start rewarding the bird. And then the bird kind of takes the place of that model that initiated the entire procedure that we wanted the parrot to go through. Basically, the goal of this model rival approach is to take the model and take this parrot that we want to be doing this exercise and we want to flip it so that the parrot is doing the exercise and the model is kind of sitting back on the side. Now, the reason that knowing operant conditioning, specifically positive reinforcement, is important is because when we're training this parrot, we are using continuous positive reinforcement, which means every time that a parrot gets the answer right, we are giving some type of reward. Now, it could have been in intervals or just random, like every 5th time or every 5 minutes, or there's all different ways that we can reinforce behavior, but continuous reinforcement is gonna get us there the quickest. So from here on out, anytime that I mention the word model, we are now talking about the parrot because the parrot is now the model, AKA the participant. But this is a case study, so we only have 1 participant, remember? Now, in this study, I want you to imagine what is happening in the procedure. We have a parrot. This parrot is being presented with questions and objects at the very exact same time. And there's 2 questions. There's only 2 questions now that the experimenter is going to ask. We are only going to ask whether what's the same or what's the difference between the 2 objects, okay? So I have these 2 Lego bricks here, and if I were to say the word same, okay, your answer would be shape. If I were to say different, your answer would be color, okay, because they're different color. Now, it's not that easy for parrots because the first thing that the parrot has to do is understand what you're asking. Okay, the answer of same or different has to come from first understanding what is being asked of them. Now we're about to get into the exact tasks within the procedure that Alex, aka the model, aka the parrot, had to perform. So we already remember and know that Alex knew some things like shape and colors, but did he know the names of the categories? And the reason that we had to do additional training, or there was an actual delay of this study, which I think is why it overlapped with other studies, is because they wanted to keep the validity strong in the study. Because when a parrot is saying words, for example, of categories, think about like our lips and how we speak compared to a parrot. So here's just an example. Maybe we had to say that the difference between 2 things was it's matter. This is paper, this is plastic, right? He didn't have the instant ability to say the word matter, okay? And a lot of when he said matter, it sounded like different things. So they really had to do a lot of training for him to say the word matter because it was coming out as like mama, And that would have, you know, if they would have done the experiment and he wasn't, you know, accurate in his words, or we couldn't hear his accuracy, then that could have meant that, you know, the research, the statistics, the data that we got, you know, was not accurate, or as accurate as it could have been. So we waited a little bit. We delayed this study just so that he could pronounce the word matter. Now, for the analysis of the study, it is really important to note that there were 2 researchers that were part of the study that gave the study that were not part of the training. And this is important because we don't want to give any accidental nonverbal cues to our animal that has trained with us so well. They might see a twitch of our eye, or they might see our certain body language and respond to it. So we wanted to make sure that that was not going to be any type of bias in our results at the end. And it's also important to know that they did randomly select the pairings. Okay, so I mean, who chose to pair these 2 together? These were secondary people. They were people that just had nothing to do with the experiment. We just asked them to randomly pair all of these items together. Specifically for the study, we're talking about a parrot, and we have to make sure that it's not super boring. So we can't just sit there and be like, same, different, same, different, same, different. We can't just ask that question over and over. So we did incorporate other things like, what color is this? How many items do I have? What shape is this? And we did randomly put those questions in there just to account for any boredom that he would undergo, but we didn't count those answers in any of the research. It was just kind of supplemental stuff to keep him going, to make sure that he wasn't like losing focus. Before the exam, what were the answers that were acceptable for Alex to give? And there were basically 3, and it was either the material, the color, or the shape. Now, remember in the beginning when I talked about conceptual categorization and symbolic representation, and how symbolic representation was our ability to take learning from one experience and move it to a new experience, an experience that we haven't experienced yet, something in the future, something that we've never seen before. Now, where did this come in this study? A lot of the items that were given to Alex were items that he's seen before, items that he's studied before, that have been presented in past learning for him. There are also items in this task, in these questionnaires, that he has never seen before, and we call these items novel or new. For example, he's seen paper before. That item would not be novel. But if I presented him with these 2 Lego bricks, and he's never seen them before, okay, I'm hoping that he can take these novel items and still apply conceptual categorization by saying, what's different? The color, okay? So you can see where we implemented some of that into the research. We're not just looking to see if he can see the same and different in items that he already knows, but we want to know if he can do that in items that he's never seen before. And it's not like we just took brand new items to compare. Some were, some were comparable, some were novel, and some he already knew. All right, shape, matter, maybe. Now, here's a question for you. We know that the 3 answers that were acceptable for Alex were whether it was color, material, or shape. Why do you think that he was given 3 options instead of 2 options? I want you to write your answer down in the comments below. So the principal trainer was there for every single question, except the trainer sat in the corner and faced the corner. And after every vocalization from Alex, the trainer would mimic his answer. But there was some very distinct behavioral, I'll say, training that happened while the parrot was being asked questions. So I did previously say that the trainer was in the corner. Now, when the answer was correct, the trainer would turn around, give that attention, which the contingent attention, it's contingent on the right answer. And he would also get some type of reward, praise. Now, if Alex, that was only if Alex got it right on the first trial. If Alex got it right on the second try, or got it incompletely wrong, the trainer would face away, give zero attention, and be told no, and the item was taken away. By the trainer turning away for a no answer, it's almost like a timeout, or I'm not giving you attention, or you're not getting attention because you got the answer wrong. This kind of falls under operant conditioning. We are training his behavior. If he got the answer incorrect, yes, we would take it away, but then we would present it again. And we would ask the same question again. And if he got it right, then we continued the procedure. We gave the praise, we gave the thing, and we switched it out and we did a new one. But if he got it wrong again, we did the same thing where he took attention away. We said no, we took it away. And then we would present it again. All right. And we did record how many times that had happened with a few of the questions. This is basically us just recording his errors. So now let's get to the results of this. And I do believe that for this study specifically, knowing the aims and knowing some of the results is going to be important for the study. Just because it's a case study, you could see questions related to the case study and specifically the results or the conclusions of the study. Now, out of 129 trials, he got 99 of those correct. Okay, it's not 99%, it's like 76.6% correct. Now, this 76.6% includes corrections. It includes when we first had to say no and we took it away and then we presented again and then he got it right. Okay, so this 99 out of 129, which is 76.6%, this is including those corrections. Now, here's some data on only first trials. So for the first trials, he got 69 out of 99 correct, which is like 69.7%. Now, it's really important to note how smart this parrot was because they do account for some learning that was going on while in the experiment. So here's an example. If the parrot was having a hard time answering the question, like we presented him this and he got it wrong, we said no, we took it away, then we presented again, sometimes he just wouldn't speak. Sometimes he wouldn't give an answer until we presented him with a new object. So if he knew that he just couldn't understand it or couldn't do it, he would refuse until we presented him with a new object. So remember that we were also testing Alex's ability to generalize same or different across objects that he has not seen before. We call these novel objects. Now, what about the statistics on those questions? It's insane. He actually did a little bit better than the objects he already knew. And I don't know what the answer for that is. If you have an idea of why, please put that down in the comments. But here's some statistics. Now, overall, we already saw that there was like 76.6% of getting answers correct, even when we had to correct, okay? And for the novel items, there was an 85% that he got correct. Now, for the first trial of the objects that he already knew, only first trials, not including any corrections, we remember that was 69.7%. With these new items, only first trials, getting those first trials right, he did 82.3%. So it looks like when the items were brand new, he'd never seen them before, maybe he was paying more attention to them. Maybe they were more interesting to him because he's never seen them. Researchers do believe that the reason that Alex did better on the novel items is because remember, when he got the answer correct, we gave the items to him. We put them in his mouth. We let him feel them, look at them, taste them, whatever. Now, if he's never seen items before, maybe he wants those items more. We may not have realized that we conditioned him to pay more attention because he knew he would get the items if he got them correct. And since he's never seen them before and he's very inquisitive, maybe that's the drive that helped him to understand these objects or these new objects a little bit more. Basically, he was just motivated to do better on the novel objects because he was curious to investigate them. These are two conclusions that you are going to want to memorize for this study, okay? One, that parrots do have the potential to demonstrate any comprehension around symbolic representations of items, meaning same or different. And they may also learn to respond to verbal questions to vocalize a categorical label. Now, before we get into the evaluation of this study, I have a question for you. How do you think a lab environment differs from the parrot's natural environment? Do you think that a parrot would have responded differently in a natural environment versus this laboratory experiment? What do you guys think? I want to know. Write it down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video. Now, for those of you who are part of my Patreon classroom, this video will go right on through. If you are not part of my Patreon classroom, the link is down below. Please consider joining if you need supplemental material to pass your AS level exam. And that concludes our study of Pepperberg's case study on parrot learning. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions for me, you can always find me at apsychology9990@gmail.com. Thank you so much for being a part of my Patreon classroom. If you have any other questions or there's content that you would like me to go over, please put that down in the comments below. I'm always checking my comments and I'm always looking to make new material. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day, guys.